Hello, everyone, and welcome to Santa Clara High School's Roar the podcast.
I'm Aaryan Dubale. I'm a freshman at SCHS, and I'm a staff writer for The Roar.
I'm Taejun Spencer. I'm a sophomore at Santa Clara High School, and I'm a staff writer for The Roar.
I'm Aminah. I'm a senior at SCHS, and I'm a staff writer for The Roar.
I'm Soo Jin Spencer. I'm a junior at SCHS, and I'm an editor for The Roar. So today we plan to discuss the poor conditions animals are kept under on farms and plantations.
So, meat consumption has actually increased a lot in the US, mainly a lot due to the pandemic and how everybody was just scrambling to get what they needed. So, over 6 million animals are killed almost every hour for humans consumption. And in around one lifetime, the non veg American will consume around 11 cows, 27 pigs, and over 2,400 chickens. And 9 out of 10 Americans actually consume meat in their everyday diet, whereas vegans will save about 1,000 gallons of water, 4 to 5 pounds of grain, 30 square feet of forested land, and 20 pounds of carbon, as well as an animal's life with their diet.
Wow, so it seems like veganism is an option to the climate crisis somewhat caused by the meat industry.
I think it's also important to consider that not everyone has equal access to going vegan because there are people with certain health conditions like kidney failure or allergies or even eating disorders where something as restrictive as going vegan might not be doable. And then in a lot of parts of the world, vegan options are also prohibitively expensive, and the meat that they're eating is sourced locally and made a lot more ethically and sustainably than meat in America.
I think it's like you brought up, it's also important to consider like access to vegan products because as socioeconomically poor neighborhoods, they've been affected by um, having certain markets in their areas. For instance, there's fast food places that are closer to areas with people who have lower socioeconomic statuses, and usually upper brand markets like Sprouts, Whole Foods, which typically sell vegan options, are kept to the higher people who have higher socioeconomic statuses.
I think adding on to what Sujin said, food deserts are definitely a thing where lower class neighborhoods will have just less access to produce, especially fresh produce in general. And then on top of that, convenience, like Sujin mentioned fast food, and that might be the easiest option if you're a single mother or work multiple jobs. Like it's not just cost, it's what you can access straight out.
And this inaccess makes it difficult for people to go vegan.
Despite there being not many vegan options in third world countries, there are still 3 meals a day, and there are many different alternatives besides vegan alternatives, such as vegetables, fruits, and many others.
Yeah, and so there are different types of meat as well, which is quite common knowledge. But one specific meat that is not very well known is veal. And veal is actually baby calves' meat. And so veal calves are raised from about 16 to 18 weeks of age and weigh up to 450 pounds. And so veal production is actually very similar to baby cattle abuse. And so newborn calves have to be separated from their mothers and their natural source of food, which is their mother's cow milk. And they have to, and they live just for like a short amount of time to create the tender meat for the veal. And they live in severely restricted environments as well.
And I feel like this sort of ties into the cow abuse that we see is commonly occurs on non-organic farms. Organic farms require a yearly government inspection for two times a year, and it's really difficult to regulate farms that aren't labeled as organic because the government doesn't have the ability to have a president over it, and they don't have the ability to invade farms and search them or observe the qualities of farms a without jurisdiction.
Yeah, adding on to that, I think there can also be a lot of issues within labeling itself. So terms like free range don't really have common standards, and there can be a lot of variation in size and condition. That same thing is true for no antibiotics used. It means different things depending on the meat or like the food itself. And so I think The solution is not just choosing products that are labeled a certain way, it's researching the companies you're supporting and advocating for changes within the food industry itself.
Mhm. And we see with social media that advocating for change has become a much easier thing to do. With the recent Fair Life Farms controversy, we see that the viral videos recorded at one of Fair Life's farms, Fair Oaks, sparked a large conversation with numerous people reposting the video and making comments, as well as completely cutting milk out of their lives.
Changing on to a different topic, pollution is also a main factor of over farming or over agriculture, I guess I could mention. Over 66% of pollution is caused by over agriculture.
Yeah, we see that there are many adverse effects with the agricultural industry, especially with the meat industry. And while there are many solutions to this, oftentimes they're not entirely sustainable for others.
I think another large part of the environmental impact of food is the emissions from transport. So 19% of the total greenhouse gas emissions from food comes from transport, and that accounts for 6% emissions from all sources. And a solution to that could be eating locally and eating in a way that moves with the seasons, so you're not like cutting over food from the other side of the world when there's stuff that can be grown locally.
A great way to do that is by attending farmers markets, shopping local produce at small markets, usually name brand grocery stores. While it's a great way and it's convenient, it's typically better to shop at markets that probably contribute less to the overall gas emissions.
Although 19% of emissions come from food transport, over 66% come from slaughtering cows, chickens, pigs, all of the above, and livestock. Over 500 million pounds of toxic gases are released each year, polluting the Earth's bodies of water.
Yeah, and that's the issue with slaughtering. There's and the meat industry, since there is a high desire for people to obtain meat and eat meat products. There's always going to be an industry for it, and that's always going to contribute to gas emissions and whatnot and global warming.
Yeah, and also certain religions have certain beliefs on whether or not you eat meat or not, and that would really just tie into a person's choice on what they want to do with their lives and how to save other animals as well.
Overfarming also has many other issues, one being deforestation. Over 80% of deforestation in the Amazon is the cause of livestock.
Yeah, livestock requires a lot of land and square acres to maintain, and oftentimes the maintenance of these square acres also contributes to overall gas emissions. By the mere existence of cows just munching on grass, the methane they release contributes to global warming, and it's a large factor in why large extreme weather events occur and whatnot.
So chickens are also the most eaten meat, with over 9 billion per year. And cows come in a close second, and lamb are under 200 million per year.
And it's unfortunate that chickens are the most commonly eaten meat because the standards that are kept in and conditions they are kept in are so poor. They are kept in cubicles, small cages full of 10 other chickens where they can barely have space to spread their wings.
This is the case for many other animals as well, not just chickens. They are not in cages, but in very, very small living habits, which they are unable to do anything in.
Yeah. So chickens aren't the only ones that are also being treated poorly, and fishing has actually also become one of the bigger problems in the meat industry now, due to overfishing actually happening.
Yeah, overfishing is a huge issue, and oftentimes the best solution to this are free range farms where fish are able to naturally live in their habitats as well as breed naturally and follow natural breeding patterns as well as natural swimming patterns.
Another issue with commercial fishing is trawling, where they will take a large net and just drag it across the bottom of the ocean. And then that can lead to not just destruction of the fish population, but destruction of the ecosystem as a whole, and often fishermen will just cut their nets through, creating yet another problem for ocean life.
This can often also destroy coral reefs, which many organisms in the ocean rely on to survive.
Yeah, like both of you mentioned, the adverse effects of fishing are seen in multiple ecosystems, as well as they also affect more than just animals that are involved in the meat industry.
Yeah, and so in the US currently there's been over 42.2 billion chickens uh processed in meat, and this is in pounds as well. And about 2.5 billion pounds of pork, 26.3 pounds of beef.
Adding on to putting statistics to all of this, about 30% of the current fishing stock are overfished, and then that has effects throughout the ecosystem because of other marine life that relies on them, as a depletion of one animal's food source will like move throughout the entire ecosystem.
So yeah, every animal has its part in its own ecosystem, and every animal is important. And everybody has their part to do in the ecosystems.
Ensuring that we maintain an even and equal balance in the ecosystems is always an important topic to focus on, because um, while we are able to enjoy freshwater salmon and whatnot and delicious fish, there are other animals within the ocean ecosystems who are suffering and are unable to find food for themselves.
Yeah, adding on, that's why I think it's important to not just make ethical choices yourself, but make sure that you are supporting regulation and supporting reform that leads to a better environment overall.
A good way to do this is always looking out for products that are labeled as organic farms and farms who go under the label of being organic. They are required to have a 2 times a year government inspection, which allows for government officials to check in on the standards of the farm and to ensure that no animal cruelty or abuse occurs.
The main thing to focus on is to do your research. Many of these sites that mention that they are cage free as well as vegan are actually not.
And once more, social media plays such an important part in research because oftentimes when people fail to do their own research, it comes up in a video later, 2 weeks later, 1 week later, a month later, that the farms that they have been buying products from directly have been committing these horrible atrocities. They have been abusing animals, kicking calves, throwing chickens. It's terrible.
Yeah, and I think adding on for larger changes, where how you vote and getting out there and protesting, if you choose to do so, signing petitions can also lead to larger change beyond just voting with your dollars.
Yeah, and United States is the largest producer of beef in the world. So you always have to make sure that you um, try to help as many animals as you can in your lifetime.
Yeah, consumerism is such a large part of our lives. While we consume, we often don't consider the effects of what we consume, and it's important to keep these things in mind, especially with the ongoing climate crisis and whatnot. And corporate greed plays such a large role in this because oftentimes, with mislabeling their products as well as misadvertising what they stand for, farms are able to manipulate people into believing that they are actually moral when they are committing atrocities on the other end.
Yeah, I think greenwashing is definitely a real problem where where products will pretend to be more green or just try to appear more green than they are, trying to trick consumers in just so they can make more money and piggybacking off consumers wanting to be more eco-friendly and like lower their carbon footprint. That's definitely an issue.
So some simple alternatives to meat itself is just some tofu and some mushrooms. Might as well.
There's also a wonder meat or green meat, which isn't technically meat, although products are forged to taste like meat. And while that is an expensive alternative, for those who can afford it, it's always best to go with that option.
For those who are unable to afford it, eating meat is not necessarily terrible. It's just best to stay away from it. You should consume one meal a day with meat in it. Two meals can be other things such as fruits, vegetables. Same for any other country in the entire world.
Yeah, there's always healthy ways to upkeep your protein intake. There's protein supplements. You can while there is also the aspect of eating eggs, the egg the entire chicken industry and the egg industry also has issues with it. So it's important to keep up with your research and make sure that the companies that you are supporting are organic.
I think adding on to that, milk is also one of those easy swaps to make. As we've mentioned before, the cattle industry is a huge contributor to global warming, and subbing in something like oat milk or hemp milk could decrease that. And then um, being selective with your milk alternatives as well, because some alternatives like almond milk or soy milk also use a large amount of water, but swapping in something like oats that's already produced in a large amount and isn't really doesn't use as much water could decrease your impact as well.
Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind is that while some companies do commit horrible atrocities, the government is often able to admonish people who are play a direct part in this. For instance, with the Fair Life Farms situation, the runoff farm of Fair Life, Fair Oaks, the employees who were recorded being involved with animal abuse have been charged with animal cruelty and jail time.
Yeah, and so just want to let you know that humans aren't actually built for meat, even though a lot of majority of people say that everybody needs meat, right? Our digestive systems actually don't come work with the meat that well because they don't pass through properly, and humans are actually biologically made as plant eaters, but we are also omnivores. And so meat can also cause food poisoning to humans and heart disease. And too much protein isn't also good for your body. So yeah.
Hmm. That's also a have that's also an important thing to keep in mind when managing your diet. Sometimes too much meat can cause adverse things. It's always important to keep a balanced palate with fruits and vegetables as well as meat. Meat should not supplement fruit and vegetables and vice versa.
Although protein supplements are a good source of protein, it is best to also at least have some type of meat or other organic protein in your diet, as unorganic proteins that are produced in labs often have diverse side effects.
So, how do any of you believe that vegans are able to upkeep their protein intake if they're not allowed to eat organic materials or eggs or drink milk?
Yeah, I think nuts and other natural sources of protein can help to upkeep that, and then a lot of vegan alternatives like oat milk and other milk alternatives have protein and calcium added in to like supplement what you'd be missing from not consuming the non-vegan option.
Although there are many vegan alternatives, meat is still important to eat, just not in great amounts. Meat has many benefits that plant proteins cannot supply.
And that concludes this episode of Roar the Podcast. We thank you for listening and hope you'll share this and future episodes with your community. Until next time, I'm Aminah signing off.
I'm Soo Jin Spencer, signing off.
I'm Aaryan Dubale signing off.
I'm Taejun Spencer, signing off.